Good evening, viewers. Welcome to this special dialogue series called the BW Wellbeing Presents Dialogue about celebrating the Festival of Life. And today we have a very special person with us. He is an author and vice president in a very well-known organization. I want to welcome Mr. Rohit R Chaudhary, author of the very popular book, How to Get into Your Goldilocks Zone, a conversation we are all fascinated about, especially when we are all working from home and there are no boundaries to think about, what do we really want from our lives. Thank you, Mr. Chaudhary, for joining us.
Hi, Rohit. How are you?
I am good. Thank you so much. Dr. Batra will be also joining us shortly. Till then, I will start with my first question. So give me a sense of the inspiration behind writing this book.
That's a good question, Rohit. I think there's a slight background. I think this topic about getting into your Goldilocks zone is a very close to my heart topic. And I've been thinking about writing on this topic for a few years. And I will confess that the COVID situation and probably the work from home situation brought the right conditions for me to write this book, actually. I think that's the way it really happened in the last about 12 months or so.
So tell me, you have observed people closely. You have, seen how they are dealing with the difficulties of life. If I have to say from some viewers who are watching us, right at the beginning, what are the top takeaways according to you? Why should people come and read this book? What is there for them? How can it be life-changing for them in your view?
Okay, let me give a brief context before I come to that response, because it's important to understand that this book is all about identifying your Goldilocks zone. And I'm using the Goldilocks zone as a metaphor. I mean, people would have heard the fairy tale story about Goldilocks and the three bears, and how Goldilocks goes into the jungle and goes into those bears' house and tastes the porridge bowls. One of them is very hot, the other is cold, and then she tastes a bowl which has just the right temperature for her to completely finish it off. And so the astronomers picked up this phrase and said that when a planet is in a situation where there's not too much of heat and the temperature is just right, then it allows for the place to have water and for other conditions for there to be life. And so they called the planet, our Earth is in the Goldilocks zone, just the right temperature for it to have life and water and the right conditions to enable life. And so I'm using that metaphor in our life, and I'm saying if you would be operating in your Goldilocks zone, then you would be actually creating the right conditions for you to be extremely happy, satisfied, gain that fulfillment from your life. And we have to create that condition ourselves. I mean, we can't be completely dependent on our environment to create those conditions which are favorable for us. And so, giving that context, moving to your specific question, why should people read this book? I think one thing that has emerged very strongly from the COVID phase is that life is unpredictable. And life is definitely short. It is not so long enough that we can spend our life doing activities and things which we are not passionate about. And so conversely, I think it is important for us to find out what we are passionate about. How can we move towards a more purposeful life earlier in our life and start doing those things earlier? And so we get more time in our life to do those type of things and be more satisfied with our life. So I think quite a long answer to your question, but that's what I believe people should read this book to understand how they can, in a structured manner, progress towards leading a fulfilling and a purposeful life.
Right. There is so much written about well-being, and it's become a dominant conversation now. I think in the last 10 years, the narrative has totally changed, and everybody wants to read more about it. Give me a sense, who have been your personal favorites when it comes to books on well-being? Who do you look up to?
I would link this book, and the reason I came up is you would have heard this book on Start with Why by Simon Sinek. And I think that particular book triggered a lot of questions. One is, in a typical corporate life, if you're speaking to a certain audience or a set of people, it's important to start with why. I think that's what I picked up from that book. And then if you just extrapolate it to your own life and say, why are you here? What is your purpose of life? Why are we here? It starts to become a bit of a bigger question. To me, well-being is linked to not just physical health, but mental health, from a point of view of doing things which you're going to be happy about, be more satisfied in life about. And I think well-being is about not being under pressure or not doing things which you don't like to do, and you're under tremendous pressure constantly doing those sort of activities. And so it's important to then choose and pick and do things which you really like to do. And you will hear people say, talk about Monday blues, waiting for the weekend, TGIF, thank God it's Friday. And I think it's important to note, why are people saying that? Don't they like to do what they're doing in those 5 days in the week? And why are they so eagerly waiting for the weekend? Which means somewhere the ratio of what they like to do and don't like to do is not in the right proportion. And so it's important that we pick up things which we really like to do and put them in a bigger proportion in our day-to-day stuff. So I think well-being is related to doing stuff that you really like to do and you enjoy doing it.
Right. So let me come back to the idea of Goldilocks. Kind of in a zone where everything is in harmony, everything is at peace, everything is in a balanced way. For a layman like me, for people who are just trying to understand the idea of this Goldilocks zone, what are the ways to get into that zone as an author? What do you how do you suggest, how can you what do you have to tell people who want to get into that kind of frequency where their life becomes balanced at peace?
Okay, that is the heart of the book. That question will now open up the heart of the book. Yeah.
So a glimpse of that.
Yeah, absolutely. The name of the book is How to Get into Your Goldilocks Zone, and as you can see on the screen, 5 steps to make the best of your life on this planet. And like many of the self-help books, and many of such genre books where you need to define some number of steps, I identified 5 steps to get into the Goldilocks zone. And so let me just briefly describe those 5 steps. I think that will answer your question. The first is to have certain principles in life. The second is to identify the purpose of your life. The third is to identify what are you passionate about. The fourth is to identify the skills to do what you're passionate about. And fifth, put in a strategy to implement all these things. So those are the 5, and let me spend just a few seconds on each one of them because I just rolled out the 5 of them there. So the principles piece is really about focusing on improving oneself as a human being, having a sort of a code of conduct, or focuses on the ethics, the moral side of our life, gives us that sort of a framework which we can use in making decisions, and specifically decisions when we are in a situation of a dilemma. So that's the piece on the principles, and I've in the book identified quite a few areas within principles that we need to constantly look at. How do we grow in our own personality and in our capabilities to become more of a role model in our life? The
Right.
second one, like I said, is about purpose and identifying one's own specific purpose in life. And there are a lot of turning points in people's lives, which creates in them a trigger to say, okay, this is now my purpose in life. And so identifying the purpose in one's life. The third one, like I said, is about passion. Doing what you're passionate about in a way should align with the purpose. So, doing what we are passionate about, identifying what we are passionate about, and going about doing those activities which we are really passionate about. And then the fourth is the skills. We might be passionate about something, but we may not have the skills, or we may have to develop those skills. So the skills piece is really an enabler of the passion. And so having those skills, and if we don't have them, how do we acquire them or get in touch with people or resources who have those skills? And last but not the least, and the most important, is the strategy piece. A lot of times we attend these conferences, seminars where we are pushed into the zone of identifying what is our purpose or passion, or do we have the skills, but we do not take the time back, step back, and put a strategy or a plan in place to actually get things rolling. So a combination of these five, I believe, getting these five into place will help someone get into their Goldilocks zone.
Great, great, wonderful. So tell me, in the writing around wellness in India is gaining ground, but if you look at our Western counterparts, the conversation has been there for long. If you see as a body of work, the all that is written around wellness, uh, in the modern context, where does the Indian narrative figure in your view? Are we at par with the golden narrative, the narrative of the West? Do we? What more needs to be done?
I think that's a wonderful question, and we need to, I think, reference back to our own history and to all the literature that we have in our own country. And in my book, also, I have very briefly touched upon this concept of Purusharth. And I think, according to that concept, there are Purusharth means literally it means the aims of one's life or person's life. And as per that concept, there are four aims of one's life. The first one is dharma, then earth, and kam, and moksha. And if you look at that construct, I think if you just imbibe those as part of your personality or your day-to-day behavior, it has a large influence on the way we think, we deliver, we work, and do our duties. So, in a way, I would say that construct in our own country is the perfect construct to help people understand what are their duties, what is the importance of the economical piece. I mean, as long as we have a physical body, it requires uh, protection. It requires we need food to be fed and things like that. So there's a very strong need for money. We need to buy a house or pay an EMI for a house, or we need to buy food or exchange money to get what we need. And so the importance of money cannot be put aside. And so Earth is completely focused on the economical values of life, whereas the other two, which is calm, is about having the desires. The ability to innovate comes from having a desire. Somebody in the early 60s thought about going to the moon and put it into action, and in 1969 somebody actually went to the moon. So unless somebody has a desire, we can't do things. And if you relate that to the 5 steps that I spoke about, passion is something which is close to that phrase. And if we are passionate about something, then we really make sacrifices, do things, and take the challenges head on. And last but not the least, moksha is more like a result, end of the journey. That, as per that philosophy, if you want to live to be liberated, if you would like to be renunciated, if you don't want to go through the rebirth cycle again and again, then you need to attain moksha. In a way, that is all about our mental state being highly satisfied and fulfilled if we are doing the other phases properly in our life. I don't know if that was a answer you were looking for, but I think that is the Indian uh, framework that we already have.
No, very well said. I totally agree with it. As an author, writing a book itself is an experience. It has its own story behind. There's a backstory to it. And give me a sense of the experience of writing this book. Was it as easy, as disciplined, as an ideal setup would be? Were there moments where there was that writer's block, or you needed a change? Because it was all during pandemic, as you said. Give me a sense of the struggles of writing this book. Was it at all there was any?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. For a first-time writer, I think everything is a huge experience. In a way, I would summarize and say, conceptualizing is one big phase. Writing or delivering that and putting it into a piece of paper, or there was no paper, I was doing it on the computer. So putting the thoughts down into some structure is a second phase. Getting it published is another big phase. And then getting it out there in the market and getting people to actually see the final product is another phase completely. To me personally, I think the first phase was the most ambiguous and most interesting phase, because I had all these thoughts in the mind for quite some time, and putting some structure to it and thinking about how do I present that entire thought in a structured manner, I think was the most interesting phase of writing the book. And probably that is the phase where I struggled most, because I had to think of various ways of putting this concept into a form of a book. So I would say that was the part of the book writing which was very interesting. Thereafter, once I had the structure, it was more logical in terms of taking it forward, refining it, taking people's views on how they felt about it, incorporating the feedback, going through the publishing process and getting it out.
Right. So I also want to understand from you, while the book is out, what is the top of how obsessed is the author? You create a product. I am delving into a very philosophical, psychological question. Does the success of the book only mean the number of books that go off the shelf? Does that worry an author, in your view? These are like the questions after you publish the book. How do you see the success of a book? Because normally we are given a metric around how many people buy it, but as a body of addition to that, domain, I think that itself is a success. What is your definition of success of a book overall?
Oh, that's a good question, Rohit. I think I reflect on somebody. I had spoken to a few of my friends who had written books before I started writing the book, about what has been their journey and what are their experiences as first-time authors. And one of them asked me a very honest question and said, "Are you looking to make money by writing the book, or are you interested in taking your thoughts to somebody else, or penning down your own thoughts? Are you writing for yourself, or are you writing to make money?" I think that's the question one of my friends asked me. And the honest answer is that I said, I'm writing for myself, to pen my thoughts. And then he said, if you're writing for yourself, then you'll spend money. You will not get any money. So I think that's the answer to your question. The evaluation of the success of the book is really in even one person reading this book and being able to put in an action plan to get into their Goldilocks zone. I think it's very important. My struggle of myself coming to some conclusion of what is my purpose in life started somewhere when I was in my early 40s, which was about 10 years back. And having realized that, I think my objective of writing the book is really to reduce that anxiety that people have about this topic and help them identify what is their purpose in life, what are they passionate about much earlier in their life, and spend more of their life doing that rather than going run of the mill and then one fine day realizing that they need to take a step back to do what they really want to do. So the success of this book, in my opinion, is even one person putting an action plan in place and doing what they really want to do.
I want to welcome Dr. Batra at this stage. He's joined us.
Thank you, Rohit. Rohit, thank you for a fantastic conversation. Mr. Chaudhary, congratulations, and let me hold up your book. If you have a copy of your book, I'd like you to hold up so that our viewers and readers have a glimpse of the cover. It's in your background, but Rohit has asked you almost all the questions one should ask. But let me, since I know you a little bit, somewhere in the book you talk about creating an imaginary bucket list with an assumption that you have no financial constraint.
Yep.
What we would call blue sky thinking. Now you brought the blue sky thinking approach to individual ambition and achievement, right? To finding that Goldilocks zone. How does one do that? Because the biggest thing is we are never alone. In the book also you say you need to find time for it. Solitude creates ideas, solitude creates solutions, solitude creates vision. So how do you think that is possible to create an imaginary bucket list with an assumption that you have no financial constraints?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Dr. Batra. I think the reason I wrote that sentence in the area of, I think, choosing your passion or identifying your passion. The reason I wrote that is a lot of times we say, I like to travel, I like to draw, I like to paint, I like to spend money on doing XYZ. The key is, if you just keep doing that, will there be a day or some time when you may not like doing that anymore? And so the question really is, if money and was not a constraint, if you were not doing it to earn money, and if you have to just keep doing it, then what is it that you really want to do, which you will never stop doing, irrespective of whether you earn the money or it's night or day, or you're feeling hungry or you're feeling thirsty, but you'll still continue doing it. And I think coming down to that core of what are you really passionate about, that question was important for me to raise and say, just imagine there were no constraints in life, and what would you really want to do? And then people start by saying, I like to travel, or I like to
play, or I like music.
Absolutely. And then you take it down and say, okay, let's assume you have been doing it for the next 30 days or 1 year, 2 years, because the money is not a constraint. How long will you continue to do that? And then say, okay, no, I don't think I'll do that after 6 months. Then let's cut it off from the list. Let's go to the next item that you've listed there and see how long will you do that. And the item that people stop and say, this is something I will continue to do forever, or I will never get tired doing that, I think is the point that we need to pause and say, I think that is what you need to do in your life.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chaudhary. Let me now ask you, the book has 10 chapters, and the chapter 4 is about principles, chapter 5 is about purpose, chapter 6 is about passion, chapter 7 is about skills, and chapter 8 is about strategy. Which is your favorite chapter and why?
Good question. I think there are 2 chapters, if I can dodge your question a bit. One is the start and one is the end, or rather, it starts with the principles, setting some sort of a framework. I think in life, it's very important, apart from doing what we are doing, to morally raise our benchmark and go to the next level of what we are as human beings. And I think it is always a change in our attitude and our state of mind. And all these promotions that we get in a corporate life is always technically dependent on, is our mindset changing? And I think in our life as well, if we want to move to the next level, our state of mind has to change. And I think the principles, the first chapter which talks about principles, is focusing on the moral side and the ethics side of our life. It's like a code of conduct. And for us to go to the next level, that piece to me is the most important amongst the 5, because that sets the the discipline, the level that you want to accomplish. And the last one, the reason I said is a lot of times we have these aha moments of what we want to do, what we want to accomplish, but then we don't take the time off to put a proper plan in place. And so to me, the strategy bit is really about getting down to putting an action plan and implementing it. Otherwise, doing all that exercise of finding one's purpose, passion, skills, etc., has no meaning if we don't put it into action.
Thank you so much. Rohit, you also said to Rohil that writing a book is cathartic. It is, and I know it, I write thoughts in the morning. Yeah. They're directed a lot at myself, a lot of times, not always, but it's for myself. You know, I relate to them. Similarly, when you written this book, you said that it helped you in your journey if a book like this would have got. So, and you said that even if it impacts one person to get to his or her Goldilocks zone, your purpose of would be accomplished of writing the book. Now, I want to ask you, what is the kind of impact you're looking to make through this book?
Okay, I think if I had to put it in a very fancy way, I would say I would like to be that person who helped people get into their Goldilocks zone. I think that is the impact I would like to definitely create. Having gone through that journey myself, having thought about what is it that I would like to do, where do I want to focus, where do I want to spend my time hereafter, and put my energies all about, I think that's the cycle I went through, and I thought I should pen it down to help people to cut short that sort of anxiety that people have on this topic. Because the moment you say, what is your purpose in life, people start thinking it's like a very philosophical question. I can think about it when I'm 60-year-old or 70-year-old. But that's a question people should be thinking when they're in school. But frankly, I don't think without having the exposure of life, we can make the decision at a very young age. There are some people who have that clarity of thought that I want to be a doctor and they become a doctor, or they want to be a certain, take up a certain profession and they really do that. But I would think that is a minority. Most of the people go through the life cycle and they follow the wind, and sometimes they do certain things because of the way the environment has taken them. But at some point, one needs to step back and say, is that really what I want to do in my personal life, or there's something else? The earlier that decision is made, it is easy to go back to the original track. The farther we go on that journey, going back to your original mission or your area of interest or purpose starts to become more and more difficult. So my whole objective is to help people go through that journey of self-reflection much earlier in their life, so they can spend most of their life doing what they're passionate about and help themselves accomplish their purpose in life in a more satisfying manner than realize that when they're at 50 or 60 and then there's just a very small window left to do what you really like to do.
Rohit, of course, you had an idea to write the book. You had the why to write the book. In the book, you talk of purpose and the why. Post writing the book, what were your thoughts? What did you gain after you wrote the book in terms of having a structured thought process? And I believe when you write, you're able to articulate well. You're able to introspect well. You're able to have a self-conversation by writing. So give us a sense of what was the change that came into you post you writing the book.
First of all, I would say I was pleasantly surprised that I was able to write a book because I never imagined I would be writing a book. But I think somewhere the conviction in your mind plays a very strong role in writing a book, and the desire to get something out to another person was very strongly there. And like I said earlier to Rohil, I think the COVID environment and working from home and not going outside and feeling constrained changes the mental behavior, and things happening around you, a lot of bad news, sad news, a lot of things not going the way you would expect them to go. I think that creates some sort of a very different state of mind, and I think this was an outcome of all that situation that was there. So frankly, I would say that getting the book out and being able to see an approach that I thought was ambiguous at the beginning of the concept, culminating into 5 steps that people can put into action, to me was the best outcome, because people, I believe, need to know how to do things. I mean, everyone wants to do things, but some direction, some guidance is required, and hopefully people will get that out of this book. And like I think you've made you shared a quote which said this book becomes your personal growth assistant, and I think that's a phrase I would like to leverage from what you said.
The PGA.
PGA, absolutely.
Not the professional golf tour that we're talking of. We're talking of a personal growth assistant.
Absolutely.
Rohit, my last 2 questions for you. You had a successful family. You launched the book on 15th August. Your dream has come true. What is the bucket list Rohit Chaudhary still has?
Good question. The proportion of how much time I can spend in guiding people to get into that Goldilocks zone, I think will be increasing hereafter. I think that is on my bucket list right now, to help people look at this in a very objective manner and not in an ambiguous philosophical manner, versus look at it. I mean, people who are working need this sort of input, and I think my bucket list is really to increase the proportion. I would not say I will start doing this on a full-time basis from tomorrow, but my aspiration is really to impact more and more people, to take this up in a very objective manner and start using their life, or leveraging. Using seems a very down-to-earth phrase, but I think leveraging this journey that they have in their hands to do things which they are passionate about, which helps people, which helps make this planet a better place for our peer group, for our fellow beings to live. And I think contributing to that in the manner that they can, based on their skills, experience, competencies, resources that they have, I think is my objective, to help people do that.
My last question.
Yeah.
If you were to write your second book, what would that be on?
Good question. Let me reflect on my personality. And there was a previous question that you asked, and I thought I wanted to touch that. I missed it out. If I analyze my own personality, I'm an introvert, constantly out of my comfort zone to communicate my ideas and get them across to people. And the book seemed like a very logical medium for me to put my thoughts together. So that's, I think, an extension to your previous question. And to this question, I think my next book, if I write, it will be for introverts, how they could be more successful in this world by getting out of their comfort zone. So I think that's the topic I would like to touch next.
Rohit, first I'd like to say one should not put labels on oneself. We do. Second is, we have all shades of personality, introvert, extrovert. Some may overshadow each other. And third, I would say the brick walls that are in our mind are there to be broken. Randy Posh said it, not me. So don't have any brick walls. If at all you have, I hope we've been able to break them.
Absolutely.
Congratulations writing this book. I've enjoyed writing the foreword. I've enjoyed reading the book.
Thank you very much.
Simple and a deep book. So I would recommend all of you to read it, buy it. Congratulations from us at BW People and BW Business World, and from BW on writing this book. And I'm sure it will impact people's life and thinking. So congratulations. Look forward to your second book. And, the world will be a better place because you are making an effort to write on things that you feel deeply about. And I'm sure it does motivate others to write a book and also makes a positive impact on other people. So congratulations, Rohit Chaudhary. It was great to have a conversation with you. Thank you so much. God bless you. We wish your book all the luck, and I'm sure it will be a bestseller. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Anurag. Thanks for giving this opportunity to speak to you and to BW Business.
It is all ours. It is all ours. Thank you.